Good afternoon, good evening. Today is May 7th, 2025, and it is 9 p.m. US Central Time. I am recording this from my office at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And this property is located 300 feet away from the residence of Mr. Robert Mueller, who is a former director of the FBI, and that is relevant to this conversation. So this is the third part of the Declaration 135. Um, and this is it's going to be a technical session, as the previous two segments. It's just a few things that I realized after I recorded the last segment. Because, after I record them, I usually listen to them multiple times, kind of, I don't know, to do kind of QA on the ideas, right? And as I was doing that, I realized a couple of things that I think are important to mention. In case somebody is looking into this. So it's going to be technical, and the things I'm going to say on this segment require that you listen to the previous segment, specifically the second segment, the second part, because most of these things are derived from that. So for you to understand what I'm going to say, you need to listen to that first. So let me start with an errata, okay? So there's something I said in the second part that is inaccurate. I said something to the effects that um, I was talking about, how about the photography website, the Reynaldo Medina example, right? That case study. And I said something to the effects that what they're probably doing is doing an image search, uploading a snapshot taken with one of their cameras. Could be a camera, one of the cameras of the vehicles, could be one of the cameras of the phone, doesn't matter, right? But the image gets sent to this distributed system, which is basically a copy or a clone of Google search. In fact, this first step, they do it on Google search, on the maybe even on the public one, right? Probably not, probably they don't do it because they wouldn't want that to be logged, right? Because then authorities could go and subpoena the logs of the searches, and they would figure out who are the agents, right? So they probably do it on their own private instance, right? But on top of the real Google index. So they have a copy of the real index, and but the serving stack is a separate stack that gets logged in the Netherlands or Finland, right? Not in the US. So they do the image search first, right? With a snapshot of the person that they photographed, by automated means. Like the agent doesn't have to take an action. All they have to do is walk next to the target with the phone pointing at the target, right? Or next to the shopping basket when they're shopping for groceries, and the system automatically recognizes that he's buying, coffee and Coca-Cola, and then they go and switch the items. So anyhow, I said something to the effect that on the first step, they do the search with the snapshot that they take, and that resolved to something like in the case study that I was analyzing on the previous segment, like the photography website of Reynaldo Medina, right? And I said that is enough because all they need to do after that point is to have somewhere a database that has only one row that signifies that, I mean, one row per target photographer pair, right? Um, that signifies that Reynaldo Medina is the photographer of Reynaldo Aguiar. So, Reynaldo Medina is the Pizarro Reynaldo Aguiar. I said that, right? That they would have that relationship stored somewhere, but that is not true. That's the errata I want to give you. That is not even necessary. So, I started when I listened to that after the fact. I realized, well, it would be really silly to go through all this trouble to create this system without employing a relational database that could be captured, seized, whatever, right? And then go and create this relationship somewhere in a physical file or whatever, right? But that could be captured, and that would be proof that they're harassing this person, right? So you see, they're probably not doing it that way, right? So that got me thinking, and um, uh, I don't know how to frame this, right? To be honest, I when I thought of this, it felt weird to me, unbelievable, really. But I think this is what they're doing. Um, so let's put a pin on that for a second, okay? I want to show you something first. Let me share my screen with you. Okay. So I'm gonna go to google.com and I'm gonna search for my name, Rinaldo Aguiar Marcano, patents and social graph. You will find this patent. Oh, it's not this one. This one. Method for building, expanding, or complementing a social graph based on contact information. Um, and I don't know if you can see the. No, I cannot see it there. Let me see. Yes, here's the patent. So this is a patent application. I mean, this is an actual patent. It was granted like 10 years ago. It was granted to Google, and I am the sole inventor in this patent. Okay. Then you can read the patent. Like the file is downloadable here or here. Right. You can see that this was the inventor is me, Reinaldo Javier Aguirre Marcano. At that time, I was living in Santa Clara, California, and the assignee of the patent is Google Inc. in Mountain View. Right. And you can read the patent; it's all there, right? So this is an actual patent that was granted to Google. Now, no, let's not read that. I'm just showing you this to show you that I created this, right? That I invented this idea that I'm going to tell you. The idea is the following, right? The idea is that if you have a social graph, like for example Facebook, right, or whatever, so a social network, you can um, uh, identify people by looking at their contact information in their phone. This is a foundational idea, right? You can extend this to other things, but um, the idea is, imagine that you look at your contact list in your phone, right? You will have things like mom, dad, right? Some names that many people will have the same names, right? Because many people call their mom mom, and many people call their dad dad, right? But you will have things like Dr. Broussard, accountant Howard Leeds, Anna Kodalo. Like you will have specific people, right? So that set of people identifies you because you are probably the only person that have that specific set of people. Even your close relatives or your close friends, they will have some overlap, right? But the set of people itself as a whole identifies you. Like if somebody shows me, or not shows me, but like if somebody shows, if somebody gets possession of your contact list, they could know that that is you, even if your name or your phone number is not attached to any of that, just by looking at the names in the contact list. The same with the phone numbers. If you give somebody the list of the phone numbers in your contact list, that thing is a fingerprint that allows to identify you, even if you remove the names of that are attached to each phone number. But just that sequence, I mean, and not, it doesn't have to be the full list. Just a few of the phone numbers, because they will not co-occur in any other contact list. and I don't know. I did some mathematics on how many contacts you need to be able to produce a reliable fingerprint. But anyhow, that's the invention, right? So uh, now let's go back to the previous conversation. Right? When we're talking about the whether they need to have this relationship between Reynaldo Medina, the photographer, and Reynaldo Gianmarcano, the engineer, stored somewhere. The answer is no, because if you go to Reynaldo Medina's website, Reynaldo Medina, right? So and you click on, for example, fitness, right? So I mean, there's a lot of images here that don't apply to me, right? But here you have Paul, you have Gloria Espina, you have Jenny Espina, you have Bree Hardy, and you have um, uh, what's her name? Rosanna Finot is also in this page, right? So those five people that are on Reynaldo's Medina website on this page are also in my contact list in my phone. You see? So this fingerprints me and makes the fingerprint of Reynaldo Medina match my fingerprint. So this is really how they are starting that relationship. I mean, the relationship that he's the Pizarro Reynaldo is this contact page, because there's multiple people in this page that are also in my contact list. Gloria Espina is in my contact list. Jenny Espina is in my contact list. Paul, well, here I'm going to tell you what I think they're doing, because remember, we talked about that they have the index of targets and the index, I mean, on the private version of the Pizarro version of Google, right? They have probably an index of targets and an index of um, agents, right? So I think they're not really doing it with the contact list, but they're doing it with the agents that I have encountered physically, personally. So the index in the index of the document that represents me, the target, in the Bizarro index, they have indexed all the agents that I have met personally face to face. And so there will be Gloria Espina, there's Jenny, there's Rosana Finol. I met her since Venezuela. Paul, I've met him 4 times in my life. Bree, I've met her more or less 5, 6 times in my life. Right? So that would be my contact list, right? That would be the equivalent to my contact list. So they have this version of contact list that is not really a phone contact list, is the agents that you have met in person, right? That you have physically been in the same space as them. They fingerprint people based on that, and then when they want to start a relationship, they create this page, right? So this page has a double purpose: is to identify the agents, so the system knows that they're in the same team, they're working on the same target. But at the same time, the presence, the co-occurrence of this specific set of agents that are also agents that I have met physically, personally, makes all fingerprints match. But when I realized this, of course, the thought came into my mind is, well, basically what happened is that they're using that invention. But this is interesting because that invention belongs to Google. I mean, Google is the owner, right? I mean, the legal owner of the invention. I'm the inventor, but the patent belongs to Google. But they are using it. So it kind of confirms what I told you at the end of the previous segment, that the level of involvement is high, right? Because they're directly using this technology for this, right? To match um, photographers to targets, so that that higher level link is made without having to store that relationship anywhere. It's made by storing this fingerprint. Um, so that um, I think that, I mean, that confirms that part, and also explains a lot to me, right? Like why they kept me in this situation for so long. I think it's because they had such good success stealing those two things specifically, right? So the entity nafus idea, stealing, I mean, not stealing them, like using it from Google, right? Getting it from Google, and then, but those were my inventions, right? So they saw tremendous success with those two ideas, the entity nav boost and the fingerprinted based on contact information that I showed you. Like, I'm the inventor of that, right? I mean, the entity nav boost, I cannot prove it to you because this was a conversation I had with Mayur while I was in the apartment of Gloria Espina in 2015, 2014 in Katy, Texas. But it wasn't patented, right? So, you have to take my word for it. But in this case, this other thing is patented. Like, you can see that my name is in that patent as the inventor. So what I imagine happened is that they saw good success with those two things. They saw that they could do these things, for example, right? And they thought, we're going to hang out to this guy, right? We're not going to. I mean, maybe that kept me alive. Like, maybe otherwise I wouldn't be here, right? I don't know. Anyhow, now speaking of that patent, when I filed that application, something kind of strange happened. I mean, it's anecdotal, but I'm going to tell you. I started receiving interview invitations from Facebook. And they interviewed me like multiple people. There was a guy by the last name Brad Shaw, I think is his last name. But like those were those interviews where they wanted to gather information. Um, they wanted to gather information, but they didn't really never make me. They never made me an offer. It's the same technique of that Amazon, right? Like Amazon interviewed me multiple times, but it was just intelligence gathering, like see what they could get, but it wasn't really a real, job opportunity. But this happened immediately after I filed that patent application, um, which is strange, right? Yeah, Bradshaw, which, by the way, Bradshaw is the last name that they used in the registration of of one of the houses of the Moleros. It's the same. They use the same last name. Bradshaw is that guy from Facebook. The familiar. This is because they indexed that interaction with him because he's an agent, right? Bradshaw, right? Um, and and then that that created that one of those registrations. I mean, the side effect of that is that one of those registrations ended up having his last name. Right? And maybe this is a good point to talk about. Sorry, I have my talking points written down here. Let me see. Yeah, so just to close the idea on the thing about this page, right, with the images. It is also a contact list, basically. Right? Now, I another thing that is that I remember regarding photos and images, right, is that over the last few years, right, this group of people that were posing as my friends, for example, right, we would do things like have a cards game once a week or once every 2 weeks, things like that. And I remember that every time we met to play cards or whatever, they always wanted to take a photo with me, right? And to be honest, it felt a little bit weird because I don't know, right? We're all grown men, and I mean, I don't know, like I don't know, I don't want to be judgmental or anything, but like it didn't seem like something that men or age would do, right? Like it felt weird, but they would always insisting in taking these photos with me, and it felt like I was a big I don't know how to say it, but like it was like the photo was about me. Like they were more interested in photographing me than them having a token of to remember that moment. Like it was about taking a picture of me, and I don't know, it felt weird, like because I'm not a celebrity. I'm not, why I didn't understand it, and it was so weird that at some point they started kind of arguing about who would get to take the picture that week. So it became kind of a thing, like they would do things like, no, you took it last week, it's my turn, like things like that, right? And at some point they came up with a system of order, like this week it's your turn to take the photo, and then next week you'll take the like they were like taking turns on taking the photo. So but now, like, with this understanding that I gained because of the Rodolfo Vargas situation, I understand, right? Is that this network gamified those photos. I mean, because those photos, and like I don't know exactly what is the mechanism, right? I see two possibilities. Maybe there are more. One is that there is a direct reward for taking the photo. Like, if you take the photo, you get clipped, right? Like if you take a photo with a target, you get a payment. So kind of a monetary incentive, right? The other one is that there's a ranking system, like a point system, and if you accumulate more points, you achieve a higher level, and then you get paid more, you get promoted, something like that, right? Like kind of a reward system, right? For taking photos with the target. But this is because it's because of the metadata, right? It's because when they take the photo with the phone, in the metadata of the photo is encoded the GPS location, which is tied to the house of the agent, right? Or to the phone of the agent, or the identity of the agent. I don't know, right? And then the agent that takes the photo, gets attributed that trust increase, right? For being in proximity of the target. This also helped me understand why is that it's important that Reynaldo Medina takes photos of everybody in December. This is to keep the database up to date, right? Because this database, uh, how do you say that? Depends or relies on facial features, and facial features change over time. Like, people could dye their hair, they could change the color of their hair, they could change their haircut, they could gain weight, they could lose weight, whatever, right? They need these photos to be up to date so they can be recognizable by the computer vision systems of the Chinese. So that's why they have these, continuous pipeline of taking photos with Ronaldo Medina and other photographers. It's a continuous thing. Like, he takes photos, something like to everybody in Katy, basically, twice a year, something like that, right? Like in December, for sure. And then there's something like for July. Like there's another season in which he does a lot of photos. It's because of that, because they need to keep the database up to date. So the Chinese don't miss a beat, basically. But that thing of taking photos with the target is because I imagine, right, it's gamified in some way, and gives them either a trust score or something, right? That they, because they were like almost fighting for who would get to take the photo, right? Like they didn't want to appear. I mean, they were more interested in who would take the photo than who would appear in the photo, right? Which is odd. Anyhow, and these were, basically Francisco Castillo, Daniel Parras, and Marcos Castillo. Uh, yes. Yeah, so this page is basically a directory, right, as well. A directory in the sense of that I described, in the same sense that I described in that patent that I showed you before. I think that is from 2016, so 10 years ago was that patent granted. The other thing that I could understand from this is the time counter that I described in one of the demos like 6 months ago. I'm not going to repeat everything I said, but basically, if I talk about a prominent agent in one of these declarations, the next day or the next time I go out, that agent will come and pass next to me, pointing his phone or her phone towards me, or pointing towards me with a car, which has a camera right behind the rear view mirror in the Chinese espionage machine. This is the same. It's because that photo takes a snapshot of me, and it has the GPS location in the metadata, which matches the GPS location of the agent. And both things get ingested into this pipeline, this indexing pipeline that they have. And in this Bizarro index that they have, then basically the agent, they can increase the time counter. So basically it's a visual verification. It's not something that happens manual. Like I have to be recognized by the computer vision system. Like it needs to be validated that it's me, that that the agent intercepted in the context of increasing the time counter, and only then the counter is increased. It's a security measure, right? So this is how nobody can really mess with the counter, because it requires that me personally is in physical proximity of the agent, and that my likeliness is verified by the computer vision system. You see, so it's a high security system, because they need to know with high accuracy uh, the level of liability, right? Like how many times that agent has been mentioned by Ronaldo again, as an example, right? Or by such and such. So they need to be keeping. They need to be keeping counts of all these, you know, dangerous mentions to understand which are the agents that they need to remove or move or hide or whatever, right? To quarantine, whatever measure they need to take. So, you know, so basically what I'm telling you is that they are basically, this suggests to me very pretty strongly that they're using Google's infrastructure for the taint counter of the FSB and the Chinese directly, right? Which is, you know, if you think about it, it's a pretty serious situation. Um, let's see. Yes. So then, you know, thinking about this contact information thing, right? Contact directory, like the patent, the fingerprinting with the contacts and all that. This got me thinking. There's something I haven't told you, uh, and I don't know if it would be, you know, worth it to like show you the examples, because the example, I mean, they're meaningful to me because I know the names, but so I think I will rather just give you a description of what it is. Right? So, you know, when I was going out with Penelope, uh, I thought that, you know, I mean, at the beginning, she supposedly lived in an apartment complex. But then, after the theft of the Calculado Health company, the technology that I created on the to compete with Careo and WebMD, basically, they stole that. And when they stole that, they extracted Penelope. Like we broke up. Like the, you know, she created a situation, and we split. We split up. And then, like 6 months later, she contacted me again. But when she contacted me again, she tells me that she moved from that apartment to a house. And, you know, she gave me a story that it's a house that she's renting from a lady who lives in Austin or something like that, or in Dallas, I can't recall. And she gave me a backstory, right? But she's renting that house. But she doesn't know anybody, supposedly, right? That's what she told me. She doesn't know anybody in that neighborhood. And this was maybe 2020. So I'm talking about 6 years ago. Fast forward to 2024, the database is leaked. I reverse engineered the how to decode it and all that. You know, I started developing technology eventually through the use of technology, a combination of the uses of technology and information from the Venezuelan informant. I figured out that that area where she lives, I mean, the immediate vicinity of her house, like 2 houses down and the houses on the back, and is full with people that I know personally. So it is not true that she doesn't know anybody there. Like basically, the setup is that they live like in a small communes. I don't know if commune would be a good word. Maybe it doesn't translate in English, but it's probably about translation. Doesn't mean that they share everything, but what it means is that they live in a very uh, tight knit community, right? In the houses, I don't know. Maybe it's a good idea to show you not the names, but like to show you the the proximity of the houses. Right? Let me go there. So she is at 3210 Scott Island, Scott Island, Katy. Right. So for example, well, you see the ones that say recently viewed. These are people. These are houses of people that I know and that live next to her. And now I didn't know that they live there. I mean, that these houses are registered under aliases. Like these are not the real names of my friends. I mean, these are people that I know from my childhood. They happen to live next to her, but under assumed aliases, right? Um, and you see the proximity. Like, for example, this one, the 29715, is Francisco Castillo. I met Francisco when I was 5 years old. Imagine that, right? And he happens to live 3 houses down from her. Of course, he never told me that he lived there. Like it was a mystery to me where he really lived. Like he never really showed me the house or anything. But that's where he lives, right? Mansoor, who is a long-time romantic interest of Penelope, lives in the 3202, I think it is, Somac Drive, right? Like basically in the street on the back. Alvin Cantero Mina, who is basically the boyfriend of Penelope, lives next door to her. So you see, they all live very close by. But of course, the target doesn't know that, right? So the target thinks that she's living there and she has neighbors as everybody else, but the target doesn't understand that the neighbors are really the target's friends, quote unquote, because at this point, I mean, they're living there because they are working for the network. They're working against the target, but the target doesn't know that, right? So imagine if I went to the cards game, right, on a Wednesday, I would meet Francisco there, and whatever I said to Francisco, then when he comes back, he passes it to the others, right? Like, it's a very close ecosystem, um, and they all, I might, right? I mean, the informant told me this, that part of the dynamics here is that they all watch the others. Like it's kind of the Cuban system, right? Like they all are they keep in line, all of them, because they know that the others are watching them, right? So if this assures that nobody deserts, basically, that nobody, you know, that nobody breaks rank, because they know that the others are watching, right? And they all know each other for decades, right? Um, but anyhow, the reason I'm telling you all this is because when I look at the sorry, hi, yeah, sorry about that. I was recording the segment, and my browser froze. So and I don't know, how it's going to end up, the continuity of it. But I was basically telling you that when I was looking at the setup in the neighborhood of where Penelope lives, it turns out that she's surrounded or in close proximity of many people that I know from my childhood, that are really working for the network, right? Are working with her, but I didn't know they lived there. And she of course knows them, right? Like, and their houses are connected uh, by the fences, like and this is a TTP of this network. Like they remove the planks and they turn them into kind of doors that don't look like doors, but they're like planks that they can remove and they can pass from one house to the next. And the informant confirmed all this. So but the thing that I wanted to tell you is not so much about that, is that when I was looking at the register, I was debugging this, right? Like who lives where and what were the names that were used to register their houses. I realized something is that the things that they picked the fake names, the aliases that they used to register the houses encode meaning. Is the same thing as the categories in the Reinaldo Medina photography. So, for example, for Penelope's house, to give you just an example, but this repeats everywhere in all the houses. Like so, but let me give you a couple of examples. In the house of Penelope, they picked the name Norma Erasmo, or some variation of Erasmo, Eramo, or Erasmo, or something like that. That comes from Norma being the mother of Gloria Espina, supposedly, right? So the identity of the alias of Gloria Espina has a mother that supposedly is called Norma Nariñez. Right? So that is why the Norma is there. So that is signifying that it's a romantic interest. And the other, and so the last name, Erasmo, is the first name of the father of Rosana Nunez, who is a long-time romantic interest that I had in high school. And the name of the father is Erasmo. So so they pick the names of two parents of two romantic interests to mark the house of Penelope, to register the house where Penelope lives. Right. So this tells the system that this is a romantic interest, and because of the names that they pick, the only possible target is me in this area. Right? So this has to be a romantic interest of Ronaldo again. For example, the House of Francisco, they pick two names that are related to friends from Campo Verde, that neighborhood where I grew up when I was a kid. Uh, and Francisco, I met him in that context. Right, so that is marking the context in which Francisco and I are related. And the same happens with the other houses. So what I'm telling you is that the names that they pick in the registrations have a meaning, like that is contextual to the target. So this tells me that they are scoring the registrations with the same, I mean, they're indexing them into the same Google-like index, in the Bizarro index, the Bizarro version of the Google index that they have. Right? So they're indexing them there in sections like work, romantic. In those sections, they are indexing those names. And so that means that they're scoring the houses with Google, right? With the Google Muppet score. That's what they're doing. And that's why my system works so well, because I built something pretty similar. Because I used to work for Google. I mean, it's the same mindset, right? Um, but this led me to think something that is explosive. How do they know the names, for example, of the father of Rosana Nunez? I mean, this is something super hard because, I mean, Rosana Nunez wasn't even my girlfriend. Like, it was one of those situations where, I wish she had been my girlfriend, but she was going out with a friend of mine. So there's a component of human intelligence, right? Like somebody I imagine of the group of my high school friends gave this information to the seven. Right? It's the only way, because this is at that time Facebook didn't exist. So this is only known by people that went to high school in that time with me. Right? So there is a small component of human intelligence for sure. But even so, this is so systematized, right? They've repeated the same process with names of people that I met 30 years ago, and are not first degree connections, are second degree connections, meaning, the father of Rosana Nunez, the father of somebody else. Uh, so, I started thinking, to give an idea, I don't even have the phone number of Rosana Nunez in my phone. I don't have it. So how do they know this? When I started looking at this, right, I looked at a few possibilities. The only possible thing that I think it is Facebook. They're getting this data from the Facebook social graph. So this means that they're basically mixing human intelligence, right, a little bit of it, to understand that Rosana Nunez was a romantic interest, but that's all they need. After that, they get the graph from Facebook, and they see who's the father, right? And then Erasmo, and they take that name and register the house. And of course, they index this in the moped. But you see, it's explosive, because it means that they're mixing the technologies of two separate huge technology companies to do this, right? They're mixing the social graph of Meta with the scoring technology of Google to attack everybody else. Right? Put that in perspective. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Yeah, I cannot think of any other way in which they could be doing this. Now, I have to tell you, there's something also interesting here. Around the time that Penelope registered that house, or where she moved to that house, around that time, Rosana Nunez contacted me on WhatsApp. I haven't heard from Rosana Nunez in probably 20 years, or I don't know, yeah, 15 years, something like that. I didn't know where she was in the world. She's in Spain, I think. But she, out of the blue, contacted me, and we started chatting, and how are you, and catching up. This is, of course, anecdotal, observational, and it's just a theory. But looking at this and the timing of that interaction on WhatsApp, because it was a series of messages, right? It occurred to me that maybe it's the same thing. It's a way to increase a relevance counter. Maybe they had her contact me, so my counter of communications in WhatsApp with her increased, which would increase the score. Imagine that the names have a score, right? Like because not all romantic relationships are the same. Like you could go out on a couple of dates with somebody, or you could be married to somebody for 20 years. So there's different degrees of importance in the relationships, in human relationships. So when they index the relationship in that index, they have to signify the level of the relationship in somehow, right? So I think my theory is that when they register the house of that house that Elias where that house where Penelope lives, they wanted to use a name that wasn't obvious, right? They didn't want to use Nelio, right? Or Peter, right? Because I could see it. They wanted to use something obscure. But the problem with something obscure is that the importance of the relationship would be low, and therefore the score contribution would be low. So what they did is that they had Rosana Nunez contact me and send me a bunch of messages over a period of a month, right? And but if that's I'm saying, and this is just a hint, I cannot prove it, right? But it was very coincidental on the timing. But if this is the case, what this would suggest is that they're ingesting WhatsApp counters real time, right? Um, because there's another reason to do this, right? I mean, they could have taken a manual action, but that's the thing. Because they think like Google engineers. They don't want to take manual action. They want this to be automated. So the solution is, integrate the WhatsApp counters feed into this indexing. And, if you need to do something, ask the person to contact the target, right? And start a conversation, and then that will increase the count. Instead of you taking a manual action to write something in the index. It's a Google way of thinking, right? I see it and I recognize it. Like that's probably what happened. Um, so I'm offering you this as a hint. Cannot prove it. That maybe it was a coincidence, right? We haven't talked in 15 years, and she happened to contact me when Penelope moved to that house. But maybe not, right? But anyhow, I think what's happening is that they're using the Facebook social graph to assign these aliases. To register these houses to encode information about relationships. Like it's the same idea, the same design principle as with the photographer and the verticals, right? But this is more insidious because this is using second degree connections on family and friends relationships that you voluntarily give to Facebook, to Meta, right? And then they use that, they weaponize that. So I think that's probably what's happening. Another thing I wanted to tell you, I'm gonna shift topics a little bit. This is just a small thing, but it's something that I I think could be the case. I don't know. It's just a curiosity, right? But I hope somebody tells me one day if this is the case. Just for my own education. In the last segment, I mentioned briefly about that house that they have behind the Villa Sport. That is the jump point for this guy, Andres Salvador Mendes. Now, maybe I should show you. Yeah, let me share my screen with you one second. Okay. What is this called? Yeah, Villa Sport. Okay. So yeah, so this is the Villa Sport, and this is the house in question, right? The 25707 Bank Springs Court. Now, what I wanted to tell you is that this road, which is called Greenbush Road, has been under construction for like 6 months. And this happened to coincide when things started escalating heavily, right? And the construction is set up in a way that this is a road that was wide, but the construction for some reason turned this into a single lane road, only one way. So you can only travel in this road today. And this road was important to me because it allowed me to go to Lake Pond Estates, but like to go from Lake Pond Estates to Valley Side Drive very quickly, right? But this road was modified in this way because of the construction, and now it's only one lane and only one way. You can only come. It would be basically from the north east to the southwest. Right, that's the only direction in which you can travel. The question I have, it's an open question. I don't know if this is the case, but it occurs to me that maybe it's just a way to block traffic. Like for example, if Andres Salvador Mendez is going to pass on the green area, what they do is that they put a machine in the middle, right? Saying, something, right? Some excuse to block the traffic at some point, like a mile before this point, right? To make sure that no car from the FBI or from nobody can pass there and photograph, what's his name? Andres Salvador Mendez walking to the Villa Sport. It could be a way to control the traffic, right? Because now it's only one road, one lane, and it's only one way. So what they can do, right? They playing with the timing of these lights that are on the other corner, they can basically block the entire traffic of that segment for 5 minutes, no problem, right? And that way they make sure that nobody comes in, nobody comes out, right? As if they were moving a president, basically, like the same idea. Um, to make sure that this critical moment doesn't get recorded by anybody. Well, I mean, I'm guessing, right? That's what they're doing. Um, so yeah, I don't know, but I don't know, right? Because it seems like a simple construction job. Why is this taking 6 months, right? And the road is blocked in this way. That doesn't really. Anyhow, it seems odd. Um, yes, let me see my notes. Yes, so this note about the calibration is what I was telling you about, why Reynaldo Medina and similar photographers have to be constantly taking photos all year, right? To keep the database up to date. The comment about Rosana Finol being there I already told you about that. Yes, so this is another thing I thought about. It's kind of an open question as well. Is in the previous segment we talked about how the Chinese figured out that they could reboot my cameras because the house is wired in a way that closet is wired directed to center point directly, and they can just lower the voltage of my house from center point. And I started, thinking out loud about who would have the wiring diagrams of this house. And I came to a list of, Phil Denning, the wife of Larry Ryan, and by extension, Larry Ryan, and um, um, there was somebody else. Mm, I can't recall. But anyhow, the question for this, the open question is whether that could be a TTP. I mean, that the person, because, to give you context, the wife of Larry Ryan is the chair of the architectural review committee. And to install the generator, I imagine somebody submitted to that committee the wiring diagrams and the plans of what was going to be done to the house. Right? So the committee approved it. But it happens to be the case that her husband, so Larry Ryan, is the CEO, I think, of a company, a small utility companies that control a lot of utilities in the area, including this one. So the question that came into my mind is whether this could be a TTP, that the TTP would be that the person that sits or is the chair on the architectural review committee of a prominent neighborhood happens to be married to a person that controls utilities. This could be important because it could be a way to pass the plans and the wiring diagrams and all that in situations like this, right? So Larry Ryan could have them because they would be in his house. He could take a photo of them, right? And this could be needed, for example, to harm a target if needed. So could be a TTP. I mean, it seems like a very convenient coincidence that the person that would have access to the wiring plans is married to a person that can actually use them to harm me. Right? So it made me wonder if this could be something standardized, and it could be probably easy to find. Right? So that's why I mentioned it. And the other thing I wanted to mention, another open question, right? So in the last segment, I was mentioning as well how I ablated the rear view mirror, so it could not communicate, sending the ping that they used to track, right? And after that, they are having a huge, tremendous trouble. It's obvious, right, that they cannot keep up. Right? Now it looks like they're scrambling, like it's a sloppy, right? It's obvious what they're doing. Uh, and but I said when I said that I mean when I said that I discovered that it was a rear view mirror where they had the beacon. I said something like, I have some questions, but I didn't really get into it. But these are the questions that I have. Is that so? Assume for a second, right, that the rear view mirror is the beacon sending this ping, this low energy, you know, ping that's very short range. If that's the case, it's obvious that this has to be transmitted to the distributed system, like the weaponized Uber, basically, almost real time, because speed is needed for the coordination to work. Like if I pass on a corner and suppose, right, that it takes 5 minutes for them to transmit the data, it would be too late. I could be a mile away at that point, right? It's useless. This is something that has to happen quickly. And I was thinking of this because, when they handle in their communications, when they handle things that are sensitive, they tend to prefer, the data being transported physically by an agent using a phone or a car, right? Like not the public internet. But this would be slow, because if I pass on a corner, then they would have to wait until somebody comes and pick up that information and then take it somewhere else. So by that point, I would be long gone. So that doesn't work. So this has to be real time. So my question was, well, is that they're incurring into the risk of transmitting the data directly from the car that is getting the ping. So imagine that they have a car parked in a corner, and that car sees my rearview mirror sending the beacon. Is that car has an internet connection over cellular or whatever that sends the information directly. I think that would be risky, right? The NSA could see that easily. So I think it occurred to me that maybe what they're doing is that they're using, so not all the houses have these capabilities of listening to the beacon and transmitting. I think it's the houses that have the satellite antennas, some of them, right? So what they're doing is that, some of these houses have this capability of listening to the beacon. And when they see it, the ones that have the satellite antenna transmit that information over the satellite link immediately, no delay. This would work well because the satellite is pretty secure, particularly the uplink. The only way to intercept it is flying a plane in the path of the antenna at the exact moment of the transmission. So it's very hard. So I think that's probably what they're doing. Now, in terms of the antennas, I have to tell you, and I mentioned this before, right? That there's different setups that they have here, but they're one setup, and I'm just saying this so authorities can narrow it down, right? You don't have to look at all the antennas, all the houses. There's a lot of ways to narrow this down. So there's basically two groups, right? So there's one group in which, if you think of the roof of the house, I'm going to do this with my hands, and I'm sorry for doing this with my hands, but so imagine that you have the roof of a house, right? So there's some antennas that are pointing to the roof. These are mostly downlinks because what they're doing is the radio frequency signal hits the roof, reflects, and then hits the antenna. I mean the feed horn device. So it's like an extension to the dish, basically the roof. That's why. But this is a downlink, so this is not the one you're looking for. You're looking for the ones where the dish, the back of the dish, is towards the roof. So basically, the feed horn is pointing to the sky directly without obstruction. Those are the obliques. Those are the ones that you need to concentrate on. And that have cars parked outside, because the cars are the ones that are listening for the beacon, because the beacon is very low energy. The heart could be 50 feet away. So basically, the car is a gateway. The one that listens to the beacon is the car. And then I imagine after the car sees that I'm a few feet away, the car transmits directionally to the house. And then the house beams up to the satellite. Now, because of the, the sensitivity of this, right? Because they're in this conflict, if they get caught tracking me, it's going to be a big problem, right? So I imagine they're doing this in a way that looks legit, probably using legit dish or DirecTV dishes, right? So I would narrow it down by that, like the legit companies that are not internet companies necessarily. So it doesn't look like this is internet traffic. And I imagine what they're doing is that they are transmitting the beacon on a control character. Meaning, like, they don't really have to send, structured information. All they have to send is a character that is pre-agreed that it means this is Ronaldo, right? This is this target that we're tracking. When they want to track a specific target, in a very covert manner, they can agree, by software, right, that they're going to send a control character. They just need to send a character, 1 byte, right? A control character, really. I would do that, right? And then they don't even need to send the location, and that's what I wanted to tell you. Because in the case of DirecTV and the I don't know what you call that, the set-top box, I think it's called, right? The device itself. When you activate the service of DirecTV, for example, the service is tied to your address. So DirecTV knows that this satellite antenna is located at for example, 2310 Britton Ridge Drive, an example, right? So they already have the GPS location. DirecTV already have the GPS location of the antenna. So the location doesn't need to even be transmitted. All they need to transmit is one character that says he's here, right? That's it. And this is, deniable. Like, how can you prove that? But I guess, right, one way could be see correlation with the location of my car, right? Like if you see that I'm passing on a particular corner and that DirecTV or the subscriber is sending a control character, and look if this pattern repeats, when I pass next to these houses that have these characteristics that I'm describing. Meaning the car is outside, there's a car outside, and they have a dish or DirecTV satellite antenna that is pointing with the back facing the roof. If this is a pattern that repeats, this is what they're doing. So it could be still detectable. Yes. And this would explain why. Yes, this is a question I always had in my mind. Like, when for example, in one occasion, I sent an email to Phil Denning complaining about the military grade antennas in Lake Pone States. And he replied saying something like, something obviously crafted by a lawyer, right? Like, oh, we looked at it. He said something like, we looked at the FCC regulations and we decided that they're okay like this. Yeah, please. But he removed his antenna after that day. And the 2218 Britton Ridge Drive also removed the antenna the next day. And I have video recordings of them removing the antenna. They had an antenna next to the fence, but they took it apart the next day after I sent that email. But you see, in other cases, if I report somebody to the OFAC that has an antenna like this, they don't remove it. And I think it is because they need it. Like, the antennas is what's tracking the location, especially close to my home. Because, this is network theory. Like, if you want to track somebody like this, you have to track them and we talked about this before, right? You have to track them as early as you can. The more time you wait to start tracking, the more possibilities that person can take a path that you cannot cover. The probabilities increases for that the person could escape. So you need to track them from the moment they leave the door, if you can. So this is the reason why they don't remove the antennas, even if they see risk, because they would lose an important leg that would then let me be without surveillance, and they can't allow that to happen, given the situation, right? That the, the authoritarian regimes are, you know, they see risk, right? So anyhow, I think, yeah. So I think these are the things that I wanted to cover on this one. So I thank you again for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.